Your support helps us grow. Hit the subscribe button and join our community today. The bank told me I owed $485,000 on a mortgage I never even signed. At first, I thought I'd misheard them, but no. Turns out my sister had used my name to buy her dream house. At the next family dinner, I didn't yell. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even say a single word. I simply slid the foreclosure notice across the table, letting the paper do the talking. Her face drained of color instantly, and so did everyone else's. Hey Reddit, this story has been unfolding over the past 2 years, and I'm finally ready to lay it all out. Fair warning, this is going to be long, but every single part is worth the read. And yes, throwaway account for obvious reasons. I'm a 31-year-old guy working as a senior financial analyst for a Fortune 500 company in Houston. Until recently, I thought I had my life figured out. I had a good salary, about $89,000 a year, owned my own house, drove a reliable truck, and had been steadily saving to start my own financial consulting firm. I'm not the flashy type with money. I actually enjoy reading those boring investment books, and I max out my retirement accounts every single year like the responsible adult I try to be. My sister Sarah, 34, is basically my financial opposite. She's never held what I'd call a real job. She likes to label herself as a lifestyle blogger and wellness entrepreneur, but in reality, her main occupation seems to be posting bikini shots and trying to sell overpriced supplements to women who don't know better. She married Ethan, a guy who sells luxury cars and carries himself like he's some kind of Wall Street shark. Together, they've built this flashy Instagram persona, designer brands, 5-star restaurants, vacations in Bali, staged photos with champagne glasses by infinity pools. Meanwhile, I'm meal prepping chicken and rice in Tupperware and driving my paid-off 2018 Silverado because I understand how compound interest works. I never really questioned how they afforded all that. Sarah always dropped vague hints about her brand partnerships, and Ethan loved bragging about his investment portfolio. I figured maybe they were actually making that kind of money through social media. Shows how naive I was. Everything started to unravel 8 months ago on a Tuesday. I was at work, deep into reviewing quarterly reports, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I ignore those, but for some reason, I answered. Mr. Thompson, this is the loan officer from Central Trust Bank. I'm calling about your missed mortgage payments on your investment property. I froze mid-typing. I'm sorry, what? I don't have any investment properties. I have one mortgage on my home, and it's current. The voice on the other end stayed calm but firm. Sir, according to our records, you took out a $485,000 mortgage in March for a property at 2847 Cedar Ridge Lane, Oakwood Estates. Cedar Ridge Lane. My heart sank. That was Sarah and Ethan's so-called dream house, the one they'd moved into 6 months ago, the one all over Sarah's Instagram with captions like, "Blessed," and "Dreams do come true." I muttered something about a mistake, but even as I said it, my stomach twisted because I already knew there wasn't one. The loan officer kept talking, missed payments, default notices, foreclosure proceedings. Apparently, the first few payments had been made, but nothing since June. My credit score was already in shambles. I was supposedly on the hook for nearly $500,000 for a house I had never even stepped inside. When the call ended, I just sat there, staring at my dual monitors, my brain refusing to process it. My coworkers probably thought I was having some kind of quiet breakdown. After about 20 minutes, I finally told my supervisor there was a family emergency and walked out. I drove straight to the nearest branch of Central Trust Bank and demanded to see every single piece of paperwork. The loan officer there pulled out folders stacked with documents, the application, income verification, tax returns, employment letters, all covered with what looked like my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. Not really, sir, the banker said. If you're claiming you didn't apply for this loan, you should understand this appears to be identity theft and bank fraud. These are serious federal crimes. Someone had stolen my identity to buy a $485,000 home. Someone who knew my social security number, my job history, my banking info. Someone who could forge my handwriting well enough to fool underwriters and loan officers. Someone who had grown up watching me sign birthday cards and Christmas presents for over 30 years. I looked at the banker and said, I need copies of everything, and I want to know exactly how this was processed. The application had been submitted online with all my personal information, but the income section had been inflated. It claimed I made $142,000 a year, almost double my real salary. The down payment had come from a bank account I had never seen before. That night, I sat alone in my living room, the coffee table buried in documents, my laptop open to credit reports, trying to piece together my next move. I wasn't just facing financial ruin. I was staring at the possibility that my own sister had put me here. I pulled up Sarah's Instagram and began scrolling through months of carefully curated posts from inside her dream house. Each image flaunting the infinity pool, the gleaming gourmet kitchen, and a walk-in closet that was bigger than most apartments I'd ever seen. Every single post carried a location tag for 2847 Cedar Ridge Lane, the house, as I was now realizing with dawning fury, that I was apparently paying for. I had always known Sarah to be shallow and materialistic. But this was a level of calculated sociopathy I never imagined she could reach. She had stolen my identity, destroyed my credit, and saddled me with nearly $500,000 in debt so she could live out her Instagram-perfect fantasy. But Sarah had made one critical mistake. She picked the wrong brother to cross. I work in finance. I know how to investigate financial crimes, how to trace money flows across accounts, how to compile airtight evidence that holds up in court. This wasn't simply identity theft anymore. This was war. The very next day, I took off work and went into full investigation mode. My first step was pulling credit reports from all 3 major bureaus. And what I found made my blood boil so hot I almost punched a hole in my own wall. The mortgage wasn't even the half of it. There were 6 credit cards I had never applied for, each with limits ranging from $12,000 to $28,000, and every single one maxed out. There was a $38,000 personal loan, a $65,000 car loan for a BMW I had never laid eyes on, and even a $78,000 business line of credit supposedly for my consulting company. All told, over $780,000 in debt existed in my name without my knowledge. And my once pristine credit score had plummeted from 798 to 534 in under 6 months. I was financially ruined without even realizing it was happening. But here's where my background came in handy. I began documenting everything meticulously, building detailed spreadsheets, creating chronological timelines, and logging every piece of evidence. I called each bank that had issued these fraudulent accounts and demanded the application materials. Every single application had been submitted online, each using a slightly altered version of my email address, and each inflating my income just enough to qualify for the high limits. This wasn't some random scammer who had stumbled onto my information. This was someone who knew me personally, intimately, someone who had my employment history, old addresses, and even my mother's maiden name for security questions. Tracing the applications revealed they all originated from the same IP address at Sarah and Ethan's former apartment complex, and the dates lined up perfectly with the period when they had been hunting for their upgrade. The most damning evidence, ironically, came straight from Sarah's own social media. I analyzed her posts for hours, and the timeline unfolded in perfect incriminating sequence. January was full of posts about manifestation and leveling up our lives. February had cryptic captions about big moves and investments. March brought sudden house hunting shots from Oakwood Estates. And April was the big reveal of their dream home with captions about hard work paying off. Not a word was mentioned about where the down payment had come from or how a lifestyle blogger and a car salesman had managed to qualify for a $485,000 mortgage. Digging into her older posts, I noticed a December meme about family looking out for family, paired with a caption claiming blood was thicker than water. Bitterly ironic now that I knew she'd been plotting to financially annihilate me. Researching Ethan's background revealed his car sales job was unstable, his dealership had been investigated for predatory lending, and Ethan himself had been sued twice for contract violations. These two were living far beyond their means and needed a funding source to maintain their image. Enter me, Michael Thompson, the responsible brother with impeccable credit and personal details they had quietly gathered over years of family gatherings. I consulted a criminal defense attorney specializing in white-collar crime, a highly recommended professional who had handled similar cases. After reviewing my evidence, he confirmed it was unquestionably identity theft and wire fraud, noting that the family connection didn't make it any less serious. In fact, it made it worse because of the breach of trust. He outlined the next steps: file police reports, dispute the fraudulent accounts, and prepare for a long, ugly legal fight. Then he added something that made my pulse quicken. Sarah and Ethan had likely committed multiple federal crimes, and if prosecuted fully, they faced serious prison sentences and steep financial penalties. I won't lie, the thought of them in prison brought me some satisfaction. But my lawyer also warned me that family cases often turn messy, with victims pressured to drop charges. I assured him he didn't know my family. My parents had always favored Sarah, the fun one, while I was the reliable, drama-free sibling. They'd probably try to guilt me into protecting her, but I was long past caring about preserving family harmony. That evening, I made a questionable choice. I drove to Sarah's house, my house, according to the mortgage documents, and seeing it in person was infuriating. The massive colonial mansion, the circular driveway, the perfectly manicured lawn that probably cost more per month than most people's rent. It was obscene. I parked across the street in my truck, watching through their giant windows. Sarah was in the kitchen, making what looked like a smoothie bowl for yet another curated post, while Ethan lounged on the couch, playing video games on an enormous flat-screen TV. They didn't have a single care in the world. They were living like royalty on my stolen credit while I faced financial ruin. That's when my resolve hardened. Filing a police report was only the beginning. They had stolen from me, lied to me, and shredded my financial stability for their selfish gain. Mere criminal prosecution wasn't enough. I was going to dismantle their lives piece by piece, exactly as they tried to dismantle mine. Friday morning, I strode into the Houston Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit, carrying a banker's box crammed full of organized evidence, printed emails, bank statements, credit reports, transaction logs, and social media screenshots, each neatly tabbed and highlighted. The detective assigned to my case had the weary look of someone who had seen every kind of criminal act imaginable. When I told him my sister had stolen my identity, he didn't so much as blink. Apparently, family fraud accounts for about 60% of identity theft cases they handle, though it's usually parents targeting their children, not siblings. "Let me see what you've got," he said. And as I walked him through the timeline, the financial analysis, and the incriminating posts, he nodded with genuine approval. "You basically did my job for me. This is one of the most well-documented cases I've seen. Your sister and her husband are looking at serious federal charges." He explained that the next step was a deeper investigation, obtaining warrants for digital evidence, and coordinating with the FBI for the wire fraud elements, given the amount involved and the interstate nature of the transactions. This would almost certainly end up in federal court. He asked if I was prepared for family pressure to drop the case. And I told him flatly, "Detective, my sister stole $750,000 from me and planned to let me go bankrupt while she lived in a mansion. My family can pressure me all they want." Meanwhile, I wasn't only focused on the criminal side. I knew Sarah and Ethan were already teetering on the edge financially before stealing from me. They had car payments on both the BMW and Ethan's absurd Porsche, lingering credit card debt from before the identity theft, and even a loan against Ethan's retirement account. They were juggling financial chainsaws, and the only thing keeping them afloat was the stolen money. I started thinking, what if that money suddenly disappeared? I started making phone calls, first to the mortgage company, informing them that the loan was fraudulent and that I'd be disputing all payments, then to the credit card companies, same thing, then to the bank that held their car loans. Turns out Ethan had used some of my stolen credit as collateral. Within 48 hours, Sarah and Ethan's entire financial house of cards was under investigation. Every account, every loan, every line of credit was being scrutinized for fraud. But I wasn't done. I also reached out to some contacts in the marketing world. See, Sarah's Instagram career was built on fake engagement and purchased followers. I'd suspected it for years, but now I had the motivation to actually prove it. Turns out about 70% of her followers were bots, and most of her brand partnerships were with companies that were paying her with free products rather than actual money. Her entire influencer persona was as fake as everything else about her. I anonymously tipped off some social media watchdog accounts about her fake metrics. Within days, she was getting called out publicly for fraud. Her follower count started dropping as Instagram purged the bot accounts. The best part, she had no idea it was me. She was probably thinking it was just bad luck that all this was happening at once. Tuesday afternoon, the detective called. "We are executing arrest warrants today. Your sister and her husband will be in custody by evening." Around 3 p.m., my phone started ringing constantly. First, a frantic call from my mom. "Michael, Sarah's been arrested. They're saying she stole your identity. This has to be some kind of mistake." Then my dad. "Son, we need to talk. There's been some kind of misunderstanding with Sarah." Then, unexpectedly, a call from Ethan's phone, but it wasn't Ethan. It was Sarah, crying hysterically, "Michael, please, you have to help us. They're saying we're going to prison. This is all a big misunderstanding." "What's the misunderstanding, Sarah?" I asked calmly. "That you stole my identity? That you destroyed my credit? That you bought a house in my name without telling me?" "We were going to pay you back," she said. "We just needed some time to get established." "Established? You're 34 years old. We can work this out as a family," she continued. "You don't need to involve the police." "Actually, Sarah, I do, because what you did isn't a family disagreement. It's a federal crime, multiple federal crimes, actually." The local news picked up the story that evening. Social media influencer charged in $780,000 identity theft scheme. They didn't name me as the victim, but they sure named Sarah and Ethan as the defendants. I went to bed that night feeling satisfied for the first time in weeks. About a week after Sarah and Ethan got arrested and bailed out, my mom called and practically begged me to come to Sunday dinner. "We need to work this out as a family," she said. "Sarah made a mistake, but she's still your sister." A mistake? Like she accidentally stole $750,000? But I agreed to come because I had plans. While Sarah and Ethan were dealing with their legal troubles, I'd been busy, real busy. I'd made an anonymous tip to Ethan's dealership's corporate office about his arrest for financial fraud. Turns out employers don't like keeping people around who are facing federal charges for theft. I also reached out to Sarah's remaining brand sponsors with screenshots of her arrest record and the news articles about the identity theft. Companies don't want their products associated with federal criminals. By Sunday dinner, both of them were basically unemployed and facing serious prison time. I showed up carrying a folder that contained some very interesting documents. Sarah and Ethan were already there, looking like they'd been through hell. Sarah had clearly been crying and wasn't wearing any of her usual Instagram-ready makeup. Ethan looked like he hadn't slept in days. Both of them perked up when they saw me, probably thinking I was there to forgive them. "Michael," Sarah jumped up and tried to hug me. "Thank God you're here. We need to talk." I stepped back from her attempted hug. "Yeah, we do need to talk." My parents were hovering nervously. Dad got me a soda without asking, which felt more like a peace offering than hospitality. "Son," Dad started, "we know there's been some difficulties between you and Sarah." "Difficulties? That's what we're calling felony fraud now?" "But she's family," Mom added quickly. "And family works things out together." I sat down at the table across from Sarah and Ethan, opened my folder, and pulled out the first document. "You're right, Mom. Family should work things out. So, let's work this out." I slid a paper across to Sarah. "This is a foreclosure notice for the house you bought in my name. The bank wants the full balance paid immediately, or they're seizing the property." Sarah's face went white, but our lawyer said we could work out a payment plan. That was before I disputed the mortgage as fraudulent. Now, the bank wants their money back, and since the loan was never legitimate, they're not interested in payment plans. I pulled out another document. "This is a notice from BMW Financial. They're repossessing your car because the loan was secured with fraudulent credit." Ethan started to say something, but I cut him off. "And this is a lawsuit I'm filing against both of you for the full amount of the identity theft, plus damages for the harm to my credit, plus punitive damages for emotional distress. I'm seeking $1.2 million. The room was dead silent. "Michael," Sarah whispered, "you can't do this to us. We're broke. We'll lose everything." "Good, because I almost lost everything because of what you did to me." My parents were looking back and forth between us like they were watching a tennis match. "There has to be another way," Dad said. "Can't you just drop the charges? Work something out privately?" I actually laughed out loud. "Drop the charges, Dad? Do you have any idea what they did to me? They didn't just steal money. They destroyed my credit score. They put me on the hook for debts that could have ruined my life forever." "We were going to pay you back," Sarah said desperately. "With what money? You're both unemployed. Your house is being foreclosed on. Your cars are being repossessed. Your credit is destroyed. You have nothing left to steal from me." That's when things got really ugly. Sarah's tears turned to anger. "You know what your problem is, Michael? You've always been jealous of me. Jealous that I took risks and lived my life while you sat in your little house crunching numbers." "Took risks? You mean committed felonies?" "I mean, I had ambition. I wanted more than just existing paycheck to paycheck." "So, you stole from your own brother to get it?" My parents tried to mediate, but this was beyond their ability to fix. "Look," Dad said, "maybe there's a middle ground here. Michael, what would it take for you to consider dropping the charges?" I pretended to think about it. "Full restitution. Every penny they stole, plus interest, plus damages to my credit, and a public apology posted on all their social media accounts admitting what they did." "How much money are we talking about?" Mom asked quietly. "About $900,000, plus another $300,000 in damages. So, call it $1.2 million. Sarah made a choking sound. "We don't have that kind of money." "Then I guess you're going to prison." I stood up to leave, but Sarah grabbed my arm. "Wait, there has to be something else. Some other way to make this right." I looked down at her desperate face and felt nothing. No sympathy, no family loyalty, no desire to help her. "Actually, there might be one thing," I said. "But you're not going to like it." They both perked up hopefully. "You confess to everything publicly. You make a video explaining exactly what you did, how you did it, and why you did it. You post it on all your social media. You send it to the news stations, and then you'll drop the charges?" Ethan asked. I smiled. "No, but I might consider not seeking the maximum penalties when you're sentenced." The look of hope dying in their eyes was beautiful. "You're a monster," Sarah whispered. "No," I said, heading for the door. "I'm the brother whose life you tried to destroy. The difference is, when I destroy your life, it's justice." The next few months were like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Every week brought new disasters for Sarah and Ethan. The house got foreclosed on. I actually drove by the day they had to move out, just to see Sarah crying on the front lawn while movers repossessed furniture she'd bought with my stolen credit. The local news was there, too, because apparently Instagram influencer loses mansion in identity theft case was newsworthy. The footage went viral on social media with captions like, "When your fake life catches up to you." They had to move in with Ethan's parents, which was hilarious because Ethan had spent years talking down about his dad's blue-collar job. Now he was sleeping in his childhood bedroom at 35 years old. The car repossessions happened next. Sarah's BMW got towed from a Target parking lot while she was inside shopping. The whole thing was recorded by some bystander and ended up on social media. Sarah's Instagram empire collapsed in real time. Her follower count dropped from 150,000 to about 25,000 as people realized she was a fraud. The remaining followers were mostly hate-watching, leaving comments about prison and karma. Her brand partnerships dried up completely. She tried to pivot to a redemption narrative, posting videos about learning from mistakes, but it was too little, too late. Meanwhile, I was getting regular updates about their legal situation. The federal prosecutor wasn't messing around. They were looking at serious prison time. Sarah could get 5 to 7 years, Ethan might get 3 to 5 as an accomplice. About 4 months after their arrest, Sarah called me, crying hysterically, begging me to meet her somewhere. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. When I got there, I barely recognized her. She'd lost probably 20 pounds, her hair was limp, and she was wearing clothes that looked like they came from discount stores. "You look terrible," I said, sitting down across from her. "Thanks," she said bitterly. "That's what happens when your life gets destroyed. Karma's interesting, isn't it?" She started crying again. "Michael, please. I'm begging you. If you don't drop the charges, I'm going to prison for years. Ethan, too. Our lives will be over. Your lives should be over. You're criminals. I know what we did was wrong, but we were desperate. Ethan's business was failing. I wasn't making enough from Instagram. We were about to lose everything. So, you decided to steal from me instead of getting real jobs? It wasn't supposed to be permanent. We thought we could pay you back before you even noticed." I leaned back in my chair. "Sarah, you stole $750,000 from me. How exactly did you think I wouldn't notice? We were going to tell you eventually. You were planning to declare bankruptcy in my name and disappear. I saw the searches on your computer." She looked surprised that I knew about that. "How did you?" "I'm not as stupid as you think I am. I know how to investigate things. I know how to build cases. And I know how to destroy people who cross me. What do you want from me?" She whispered. I pretended to consider it, full confession, public apology, and you admit that you're a worthless piece of trash who betrayed her own family for money. If I do that, will you drop the charges? No. Then why would I do it? Because it might make me feel better about what I'm going to do next. I pulled out my phone and showed her a document I'd been working on. It was a detailed exposé of her entire fake life, the purchased followers, the fake brand deals, the lies about her income, everything. I'm sending this to every marketing blog, social media watchdog, and investigative journalist I can find. By the time I'm done, Sarah Thompson will be synonymous with social media fraud. Her face went white. "You can't do that. I'll never be able to work in marketing or social media again. That's the point. But how will I make money when I get out of prison? That's not my problem. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to steal from me. I don't understand. We're family. How can you be so cruel?" "Family?" I laughed. "Sarah, you stopped being my family the moment you decided to destroy my financial life for your Instagram fantasies. Now you're just a criminal who happens to share my DNA. Please, Michael, I'll do anything. I'll be your servant. I'll work for free. You'll go to prison," I said, standing up. "And when you get out, you'll have nothing, no house, no car, no money, no career, no reputation. You'll have to start over from zero, just like you tried to make me do. That's not justice. That's revenge." "You're right. It is revenge. And it feels amazing." About 8 months after Sarah and Ethan's arrest, we finally got to the sentencing hearing. The courtroom was packed with reporters and people who just wanted to watch justice being served. When the judge called me to make a victim impact statement, I was ready. "Your Honor, 8 months ago, I discovered that my sister and her husband had stolen my identity to finance a lifestyle they couldn't afford. They took out a mortgage, multiple credit cards, personal loans, and a business line of credit in my name, totaling over $780,000 in fraudulent debt. I looked directly at Sarah as I continued, but the financial damage was just the beginning. They destroyed my credit score, which I'd spent years building. They put my home ownership at risk. They jeopardized my ability to get loans, rent apartments, or even keep my job. More than that, they betrayed a trust that can never be repaired. The defendants have shown no real remorse for their actions. Even after being caught, they continued to minimize their crimes, claiming they were borrowing from family. Your Honor, I'm asking for the maximum sentence allowed by law, not because I'm vindictive, but because justice demands real consequences for deliberate, calculated crimes. Judge Williams looked at Sarah and Ethan. Stand for sentencing. Ms. Thompson, you have committed serious federal crimes that caused substantial financial and emotional harm to your own brother. I sentence you to 36 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation and full restitution in the amount of $847,000. 3 years for Sarah. Mr. Harris, I sentence you to 24 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised probation and joint liability for restitution. 2 years for Ethan. As they were being handcuffed, Sarah finally looked at me. Her eyes were red with tears, and her mouth was moving like she was trying to say something. I just stared back with no expression. 2 years into their sentences, I got a call that changed everything. Turns out Sarah and Ethan had been running a whole network of financial scams. They had stolen identities from at least 6 other people, friends, relatives, even Ethan's former coworkers, and the total damages were over $2 million, which meant that both of them were now facing additional federal charges that could add another 8 to 12 years to their sentences. Then, as if that weren't enough, I got a call from a civil attorney representing victims in a class action lawsuit who told me the settlement was projected to be somewhere between $15 and $20 million. And as the very first victim to report the crimes, I'd be eligible for the largest share, about $3 to $4 million. The case blew up in the media, made national news, and suddenly Sarah's mugshot was everywhere, almost always paired with screenshots of her absurd Instagram posts about manifesting wealth. She'd wanted to be famous. Well, mission accomplished. Then, about 6 months ago, I got a collect call from federal prison, and it was Sarah. Michael, she whispered, thank you for taking my call. I asked her what she wanted, and she said she needed help, that they both did, because of the new charges and the lawyer saying they were now looking at another 10 to 15 years. Sounds about right, I said. But she kept pleading, saying she knew what they did was wrong, but that they couldn't survive another decade in prison. I reminded her that she should have thought about that before becoming a career criminal. And she tried to argue they weren't, just that they'd gotten in over their heads. I pointed out that she had stolen from dozens of people over 3 years, had planned to steal from me again when she got out, and that made her textbook career criminal material. She brought up the class action lawsuit, claiming the millions I might get were coming from destroying their lives. And I corrected her, no, that money was coming from them destroying other people's lives, and I was just getting compensated for it. She begged me to testify on their behalf at the new sentencing hearing, suggesting maybe the judge would show mercy. But I laughed at the idea, asking what it would take for me to help her. She said anything, offering to work for me for free when they got out, even to sign over any money they ever made. But I told her to stop because there was nothing she could say or do to make me help her. She made her choices, and now she got to live with the consequences. She said they'd die in prison, that another 10 to 15 years would leave them in their 50s with their lives over, and I told her good. Maybe that would keep her from destroying anyone else's life. She screamed at me, saying she was my sister and asking how I could be so heartless. But I told her I wasn't heartless. She had stolen my identity, destroyed my credit, tried to bankrupt me, done this to dozens of others, planned to do it to me again, and yet thought I was heartless for refusing to help. She cried, apologized, asked what more I wanted, and I told her nothing. I didn't want anything from her because she had nothing I wanted. She was a criminal who was going to spend the next decade or two in prison, exactly as she deserved. She kept begging, saying she'd humiliate herself however I wanted if I just helped. But I told her no, simply no. And when she pleaded again, I said no a second time and told her to enjoy prison before hanging up and blocking the prison's phone number. 3 months later, Sarah and Ethan were each sentenced to an additional 12 years, meaning with their original sentences, they'd be locked up until they were almost 50. The class action settlement came through last month, and my share after legal fees was $3.8 million, which I used in part to start my financial consulting business and buy a bigger, more comfortable house. Not extravagant, just comfortable. Then I got one final letter from Sarah in prison where she wrote that she knew I'd probably never forgive her and understood why, admitting that she had destroyed my life and the lives of many others because she was selfish, greedy, and stupid, that she couldn't take any of it back, and that she would probably die in prison because of the choices she had made. She said she was sorry, even though she knew sorry wasn't enough, and that she hoped I had a good life because I deserved it more than she ever deserved the money she stole. I read it twice, then threw it in the trash because some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, and some people make choices that put them beyond redemption. Sarah made her choices, and now she gets to live with them for the next 12 to 15 years while I'm living my best life, legitimately this time. The consulting business is thriving. My credit score is over 800. And I'm dating someone amazing who finds my story about taking down my criminal sister both terrible and fascinating. Sometimes justice isn't just served, it's served with a side of karma and a garnish of poetic irony. Sarah wanted to be an influencer. Now she's influencing other inmates. Ethan wanted to live the high life. Now the highlight of his day is probably commissary food. And me? I'm the guy who turned his sister's attempt to destroy his life into a multi-million-dollar payday and a thriving business. Not bad for the boring brother who just worked with numbers, because sometimes the best revenge really is living well and letting the justice system do its job.